This is White Lightning 777. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past, 20 years, uh, we all know that the leftoids have leaked a draft Supreme Court decision that would overturn the Roe v. Wade and Casey decisions, basically because of the fact that the boils down to the sensible fact that the founding fathers simply don't talk about would not talk about sex in the context of the Constitution. That topic wasn't talked about, and there's no tradition of abortion. I mean, the first law is banning it apparently, and I was looking at the appendices. I thought it was around the Civil War. That first law is really banning it came out like the 1820s. It kind of the state laws mostly arose from the 1820s to the 1920s. It's interesting. And the same thing's true in the territories. So they're really, I mean, yeah, 1776 happened where the time when the Constitution was ratified, yes, technically it was legal in 13 states. Okay. But there's no obvious solution to this problem aside from allowing the states, people in the states to resolve for what is culturally appropriate. See, the thing the leftist, and here's the contradiction with leftoidism or socialism, they appreciate diversity from afar. Okay? If you are, let's say, fiercely proud of your national identity and a patriot and, aggressively defend your culture, that the West is the best kind of a person. And let's say you're the, I don't know, Azov battalion. You're in Ukraine. You're on the other side of the world. Yay, we love you. I mean, Azov, they're not Nazis. They're kind of like, basically they're in a lot of ways more similar to the Proud Boys than anything else. The NI is, it's a wolf angel, but it just means national identity. And the yellow color, the yellow on the Ukrainian flag means amber waves of grain, and the blue is the sky. Okay, that just our national identity. We are westernized, and Ukraine does produce a lot of grain and a lot of food, feeds a good part of the world, and they take pride in that. Good for them. If you are a member of Azov Battalion, and you're a sort of a nationalist, fatherland nationalist with a distinct culture and values, you're far away. The leftoids love you. But if you're, say, like the Proud Boys or MAGA crowd, well, they like diversity until they love diversity until they, people like, act diversely. The left has to answer this contradiction. Do you really want to live in the United States, a country with more cultural, religious, social norm, folk ways, and economic diversity than any other country on earth, and the ramifications that entails? Or do you want to live in an autocracy, an Antifa, eco-terrorist autocracy that has an irrational fear of white people, carbon dioxide, uh, heterosexual behavior that also manifests itself with an extreme eco-terrorist agenda run by sex perverts who think they can engage in shape-shifting with a very narrow, anti-science, very dictatorial point of view? And do you want to live in an Antifa-style autocracy where there's nothing but leftoids, nothing but people like yourself? Or do you want to live in a diverse country? I think the answer is they don't want to live in a diverse country. If you can only appreciate diversity when it's on the other side of the world, but not in your backyard, you're a hypocrite. And you're a bigot. And of course, socialists are the worst bigots around. Whether it's international communist socialists, the Union Soviet Socialist Republics, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Democratic Socialist in the United States AOC. The other thing the left has to understand, you don't speak, female feminists, you don't speak for women. Third generation feminists can only speak for other third generation feminists. Take the case of men, okay? Now, I'll use an extreme example. The Aryan Brotherhood represents white men. Well, nobody in the Aryan Brotherhood says because we're male, we represent Hispanic men and black men and Japanese men just because we're male on the basis of our anatomy. Even they're not that crazy. Congratulations, feminists. You've managed to get hit with a stupid stick more than the Aryan Brotherhood. Feminists do not represent all women. The blue-haired, shrieking, non-binary perverts represent themselves. Do you know what patriot women call you, people? Don't you realize the so-called pro-life movement that you don't like is a henhouse? Don't you realize that the vast majority of polls taken indicates that women are more likely to want to restrict abortion than men are? I mean, when it comes to the subject of men, most men don't even really want to walk down the feminine hygiene aisle. They don't want to walk in the women. I mean, a normal, well-adjusted man doesn't even want to go in the ladies' room. Okay, they're the sort of thing with the women's issues is kind of like, here's kid gloves, figure it out yourself, and if you need a shoulder to cry on, we'll do that too. We're not really interested in getting into the details of women's cycles and everything else. Men just aren't interested in doing that. Of course, there is also an interest in, of course, avoiding sperm jacking and reducing the possibility of being sued for child support payments. Someone lied about in other words, someone lied about being on the pill. Here's your one chance to reverse it is to pay for an abortion. That's the interest. So no, men are not going to predominantly take away your abortion rights. The second thing that these leftists don't understand, women are a voting majority. Between 50 to 55% of the eligible voters in the United States are female. You're not an oppressed minority because you're not a minority. If you want to take women as a whole, okay, you're not a minority. If all of the women, in theory, got together, they could take over the country without a single man agreeing with them. Theory. Of course, that would never happen because people aren't defined by their anatomy. People mostly identify with their culture, their peer group, their religion, their friends, their family, and other types of things, not just their anatomy. Okay. The leftist, you have no business as a leftist dictating any policy to any red state. You have absolutely no right to go in as a minority viewpoint and force your viewpoint on the majority. And the Supreme Court didn't ban abortion. If a given state decides that they want to perform abortions hanging upside down from the ceiling like Batman, put the contents of said abortions into super squirters, run up and down the street buck naked, yelling, "Women, empower women," and then throw it in sushi at the full moon, and do this at the taxpayer's expense, they're free to do that. If, on the other hand, you are more of a right-wing person and you consider abortion to be cruel, kind of like, in a lot of ways, the pro-life thing with the unborn baby, a lot of ways it's kind of like the animal rights movement. The people who tend to, the sort of personality of the people who tend to be the most pro-life and right-wing, they're the same kind of people that, are against animal experimentation and don't like to use cosmetics on rabbits and stuff like that. It's a very similar argument. In fact, if you look at other cultures, for example, Hindus that are also pro-life, they're also against, eating meat. It's interesting. A lot of pro-lifers, they're also, a lot of them are vegan too. I don't like hunting very much. It's an interesting correlation, of course. Leftists don't know right-wing people, and so they don't know that. But the vast majority of the pro-life movement are made by women, typically Christian women. And it's a question of cultural appropriateness. For example, another example, in most states, fighting animals against one another, like dog fighting or cockfighting, whereby roosters fight one another, is illegal. But in Puerto Rico, cockfighting, whereby one rooster is fought against another in a ring, is part of their cultural tradition, and it is protected under their law. Okay? In most states, snake handling fenomous reptiles without the appropriate training and permits, is considered a felony and manslaughter if someone dies. In West Virginia and a few other states, snake handling is enshrined in the law because that is part of their cultural tradition. That is culturally appropriate for that time, place, location, and people who live there. Cultural appropriateness and understanding divergent cultural appropriateness is basically, I would almost argue, a precondition for truly accepting diversity. By geography, abortion in all 9 months and maybe, a month after birth or whatever is culturally appropriate in California. It's culturally appropriate in Oregon. Even when you look at things like assisted suicide, in some states it's blatantly illegal, in others it's protected. That is culturally appropriate. If blue state leftists, where they are clearly a voting majority, wish to perform abortions in public, and fine. If you want to do that and then eat the placentas of children that are born or engage in so-called free bleeding, whatever, have fun. But you have no business dictating to people who are not leftists, who do not share your culture, forcing your practices on others. And I would caution my right-wing friends as well. We've just had a case with Roe where the federal government is putting people in a straitjacket over abortion. I don't think that a federal ban on this is any more of an appropriateness than forcing everybody to accept it. It's best left to the state level. In fact, if it was left to the county level, that would be even better. But there's a flip side to the whole pro-life thing. Use of my control over your body, okay. Look at how much trouble, for example, taxes have been with redistributing wealth, taking money from productive citizens and giving them to social parasites, even though they can work. Now, imagine a tax. See, if you can, for example, let's say you're pro-life and demand that a female lend their uterus to another individual for a period of time based on their needs-based, whatever. Well, why can't you do that with blood transfusions? Well, they need a transfusion. You have to donate blood every year. Someone needs a kidney transplant. They're going to die a horrible death. Well, you only need one kidney. Why can't we mandate that you have to donate your kidney? Partial liver donation is an option. You can donate part of your liver to help somebody with liver failure and it'll grow back. So why can't we mandate that you donate your liver? Why can't, even when someone dies, they don't have to be an organ donor. They can say no. Why don't we mandate that every single person who dies has their body picked over by the state and the organs given to those whose life depends on it and they need that? If the thing with the pro-life thing, the slippery slope, the other flip side slippery slope that no one talks about, even the abortion people don't go near it, is that you can end up distributing flesh and blood the same way the communists want to redistribute wealth. The social harm and mayhem resulting from such a policy would sort of create kind of a Repo the Genetic Opera world. This isn't going to be a theocracy. This is going to be like Repo the Genetic Opera, where you know, slice, dice, mix, and match parts become the norm. Oh, and by the way, what if someone needs stem cells? Okay, well, their life depends on it. You're pregnant. You might even end up in a situation where you have to get 1 or 2 abortions during your life so that your fetus and its stem cells can be donated to others. Cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. The snakes eat its tail. The circle comes around. As long as we're using flesh and blood to save more lives than we take, to maximize the number of lives saved, society can slice and dice you so long as, in theory, there's a chance that you'll survive and that you'll be fairly physically safe in the process. This is not desirable either. This is why it's best to have a non-uniform policy on abortion. It is actually the best way to protect freedom and living in a free republic is to one of the best ways is to have radically different policies for different cultures, religions, ethnicities, and population centers from one another. Because having more diversity does tend to protect freedom. Long live the Republic. This is White Lightning 777 signing out. I'm running out of space on my card. Yeesh.